Hello class, my name is Joseph Murray and today I will be answering Aubrey Gorman's questions. I will first read her questions so we know what we're talking about here. She asks, is forcible redistribution of power within the elite, like the mature Ottoman Empire, enacted plausible in today's world, or would we need a more violent rapture to level the gap? Could this only level it temporarily? So that's a multiple part question. I'm going to formulate it specifically to Western civilization, Northern America, and Europe. So I think there's three problems that stay in the way of us achieving this sort of redistribution. First of all, I think that, well, if you look at the philosophers that have laid the foundation for what it means to be democratic, what it means to be American, those values are not conducive to redistribution. And I would like to make clear this is not me saying that we shouldn't help those in need. This is simply me explaining why we have not yet been able to. So if we look at John Locke, he's very influential within Western democratic values and ideals, and he pioneered the ideas of life, liberty, and property. But I want to make sure this is not, he was never ensuring, and he was not ensuring that you will be given property, right? He's saying you have the right to maintain yours once you've achieved it. So the problem is when we have people like Locke that have set the foundations for our democratic worldview, it is very difficult to snake around past the fact that your property is your property and you cannot be abridged from it. It is very hard to work within that framework and then come up with an idea as to how or why we should then redistribute the wealth of others. When that has happened, it didn't work very well. We can look at Sir Edmund Burke's disagreement with the French Revolution. The French Revolution was a redistributive war fought against the French where they were trying to take back from the elites and redistribute to the public. But the problem was that when they took all the property and all the wealth from the elites, things went awry very quickly. There were too many chieftains, not enough Indians, so to speak. There was no real set, clear way for the country to move forward in. And one of the things that we actually found through the French Revolution was that despite the total redistribution of all the wealth, all the goods, and all the property in the country, the lives of the average Frenchman actually went down. So we have the French Revolution as an example where there was less inequality in the country, yet the quality of life was severely decreased for everyone. Rather than people being slightly poor in some parts of the country, in poverty in other parts of the country, and a lot of people making a lot of money, everyone was equally suffering. So I don't think it is fair to say that inequality alone is something that is bad, because inequality means there's a distribution in how people make their money. But for that to exist, for inequality to exist, there must be winners. And it is without a doubt the case that we would rather have a lot of breadwinners than everyone equally losing out. Another one we have is Thomas Hobbes, right? He talks about the social contract, a way of how people balance freedom and safety, protection, right? We found that a lot of times in Western civilizations that people are very willing to leverage certain personal rights to make sure that they ensure the protection of their way of life. So when we have instances like this, it is very hard to work within the Western democratic framework to conjure up a reason for why or how we should have redistribution. Another reason that I'm not necessarily sure that that is necessary is because the increase in inequality in the world has actually led to an extreme reduction in poverty worldwide. In the last 25 to 30 years, we've cut extreme poverty by 1.2 billion people. That's because in the less developed countries, inequality has skyrocketed. And at first that sounds like a very bad thing, but it has been the greatest thing for these countries. Before the 90s and before the early 2000s, the countries that were very poor were not unequal because the vast majority, and I'm talking about 98% of the population, was in extreme poverty. With the help of increased technology, genetically modified foods so no one goes hungry, increased job markets, and increased global trade, inequality has skyrocketed in all these countries. But with the increase of inequality, there's been an increase in people who are being successful. The fact that there are people at the very top and then distribution of people from top to bottom throughout the social hierarchy shows that the social order of things has been a lot better. So I think it is not a very safe argument to make that the existence of inequality is something that has to be fixed, because historically every time inequality has increased with technological increases that we're having today in the 21st century, it has had good consequences, not bad consequences. And every time that people have tried to remediate the inequalities that exist, it has led to bad things that have happened. So when you ask what needs to be done about it, there's nothing that can be done unless you want to completely uproot every single tenet of the Western democratic society. There's nothing that can be done, and anything that will be done will not be long term. When you look at the great ruptures in history, um, by example, when you look at the Communist Revolution in Russia or the French Revolution in France, every time the complete social order of things has been rejected in an attempt to gain inequality, all it did was level the playing field so that the people at the top could come through again, right? When we look at the textbook, in the first chapter, it talks about the social hierarchy of things. The natural existence of inequality will always be there. It will always be there. So when you level the playing field, all it does is allow for those who are going to have relative power to grow again. So, in a general answer to your question, any attempt to completely redistribute all the wealth in our societies will be temporary. It has never been long term. And it would take a complete and total disassembling and changing from the ground up every single facet of the foundation of what it means to be in a Western democracy. So is it plausible today? No. No, it is not.